I'm going to have a career in music, because it may not be for you. You'll find out if you want to be a musician, if that instrument is in your bedroom 24 hours a day and you're playing it and driving everyone mad, you know then you're a musician.
I think the thing that I would say is to follow your own heart, you know, trust your own judgment. It's a great life being a musician, and if you have the desire to be, I think it's actually got that much to do with talent, or it's a desire. Anyone can play if they really have the desire to do it and put the work in. You know, as a kid, I played until my fingers, every day until my fingers really, really hurt. In fact, they still hurt. But on those big guitars, you know. But I think that's it. You really have a desire to do it and follow that road and trust your own judgment, develop your own style. But it's a great life, and I think the three of us, even if we weren't so lucky enough as we are, you know, to be here with all these lovely friends and this good vibes that we get, and that's the most wonderful thing. You know, you realise how much love there is. I know it's for the music and that kind of stuff, but it's a wonderful life, and even if the three of us weren't here, I think we'd be playing up the pub somewhere anyway. So.
Do any of you do that? Do any of you have a little, you know, not name where the name of the pub or anything, but do any of you guys ever just go down and show up? I mean, I know George Harrison, there was a whole bunch of those guys that lived around where he did in England, and he and I believe it was John Lord and Mick Ralphs, they just show up at this little pub down the road there, Henley on Thames, I think. Any of you guys ever do that? Thames, sorry. Okay. I'm from Brooklyn.
So?
We've got the Hudson.
Still Thames. Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing, you know. Yes, of course we all do that. We'll do that. If we're among friends, it's lovely to have a guitar and play. But a funny thing happened to me a few years ago. I was in Venice, and staying at a lovely little hotel and on the Grand Canal, and there was a karaoke machine in the bar, and you kind of know what's coming, don't you? But there's a karaoke machine in the bar, and there was a Norwegian chap and his wife that were in charge of the book every night. You know, there's a karaoke book, and they were sort of the bosses of the whole thing. They were only on holiday like I was. But I was sitting next to him having a drink in the bar, and the guy said, "Oh look," he said, "My Funny Valentine." And his wife said, "Yes, but look, next to Nights in White Satin. I love that Nights in White Satin." So I leaned over and I said, "Okay." I said to this Norwegian guy, "If you do Nights in White Satin, I'll do My Funny Valentine." So I was like, "Okay," and he was looking at me, "Okay, you know, take me on, would you?" So I did My Funny Valentine, and I thought I did it rather well. But it doesn't have a finish. It just stay at the, each day is Valentine's Day. That's about the reception my version got. Each day is Valentine's Day. But I thought I did it rather well. And then he was like, "Right, okay." So he went into Nights in White Satin, he got to the "Because I love you," and he stood up and he gave it everything. He left it all in that bar, you know, on that song. And he went down an absolute storm. He was a total success. And I thought, well, you can't say anything. There's no point in saying. He wouldn't have believed me anyway. Those things happen. I was very pleased with him. It would have been awful if it had died.
do you two ever do karaoke? There was karaoke last night here. Oh, you know it's on the show.
That's what made me think of it.
In Sandy Bay on the west coast of Australia, I did a karaoke, but I did not to myself. Nobody knew who I was. That was the effect on the entire audience. That's the extent of my singing, public singing career. I keep it to bathrooms now.
You know, you talked about growing up in your hometown, Justin, and people going, you know, are you a musician? Have you made it yet? Things of that nature. When did you guys realize that you made it? Was there a special moment, a defining moment? Was it, you know, sale of a record, hearing it on the radio, seeing you on TV? Was there a particular moment for each of you?
It was, for me, it was all put in perspective. I think it was lost call but one of the record executives came to me and he thrust out his hand and he said, "Congratulations, welcome to the big time, Ray."
I think for me it was we weren't a band that kind of thought like that. That's the thing, and we were kind of under the radar. You know, Nights of course was big, but we had to really wait until Question to have another kind of blockbuster like in the charts. But because our thing was making albums and we had a wonderful company in Decca who gave us the freedom to do that, we owe Sir Edward Lewis a lot, really, for his kindness and the freedom of the studio that he gave us. But for me, it was, it's dawned on me, it took a long time to dawn on me, and it must have been 1971 or something like that. We played Madison Square Garden, and we did 2 shows, and they gave us an award. It was called the Golden Ticket for selling more tickets than anybody else ever. That was Madison Square Garden. Now there's a good reason for that. It's not that we sold more tickets in one go, it's just that we did 2 shows in one day. And nobody had ever done that before, so we sold 40,000 tickets. And I think Ray and I went out outside and gave away a few tickets. Nobody recognised us. But I think we both at that moment thought, maybe we've made it. You know, we went out to look at the name, to ponder it all. Quite wonderful. And to have a joint. But mainly to ponder it and look at the slide. Sold out.
For me, one of the things was Decca Records was in London on the River Thames, a huge building, and the head of the record company, Lewis, we used to have our meetings there. We went into the building, there was 2 lifts, 2 elevators, one with a guard and one without. The one with the guard was for Sir Edward Lewis only. No one was ever allowed in that lift except him. And so when we used to have to go there, even after we'd made Days of Future Past and In Search of the Lost Chord, we had to go on the lift with everyone else. And then we went there for a meeting one day, and as we were renting it in the normal lift, into Sir Edward Lewis's lift with the guard. And I thought, yep, we made it, we're going to the top.
This is a subject here, it's a great subject, because Sir Edward Lewis, like I say, he wasn't very man, but he did have a habit of, you know, getting things a little bit wrong. But, like Graham was saying before, but in fact the whole board of directors did in Decca. They were very sweet, very kind to us, even if they didn't know who I was. But we had lunch one day up there, and Sir Edward on the 5th floor, and at Decca, and Sir Edward always had the same thing. He'd have well, cheese souffle or something like that. And this was when Decca was coming to an end, and I could see that they were going to close down the studio, Broadhurst Gardens, which was a disaster really. In the end they sold off, they had so much real estate, Decca, because they had lot of consumer divisions. They sold televisions, the radar, of course, which is probably even now, as we speak, guiding this boat. Please let it work. But anyway, we went up to him, and I sat next to him deliberately to try and talk him into the possibility of having a commercial, of turning these beautiful studios into a commercial proposition. And I was about 10 or 12 minutes into my talk while he was in the middle of his cheese souffle, and I realised I'd run out of chat, persuasion, and he looked up and he said, "Like to drive fast, do you, Justy?" Did you hear what I said? Like to drive fast, do you, Justy? It was at that moment I knew all was lost in the studio department.
Yeah, but you got the Steinway piano out
I
of
did
it.
get Now that's another interesting story. I'll bore you with one more story about that. Because we were talking about Decca Radio. Well, John and Graham had boats, and actually it was Tony Clark, I think, who was the most persuasive because he had a boat. And when the studios were closing down, they all had boats, and Decca gave them a Decca radio radar system, which was very valuable. But I didn't have a boat or anything like that. So I said to Hugh Mendel, executive producer, Huge Muddle, we used to call him, Hugh Mendel, and I said, I haven't got a boat. So, and he said, well, what would you like? What would you like, dear boy? I said, that Steinway over there. Okay. Just get the boys in to take it, and I've still got the Steinway grand. It's a beautiful piano. Thank you, Decca. I didn't want a Decca radar anyway.
You mentioned Ray for a second there, and I know that you have not been performing Legend of a Mine in concert, but I just love this question, and I apologize, I deleted the person's name who wrote it, but do you remember where you were when Timothy Leary died?
We were in a studio in New York. We were recording a song called "This Is the Moment" for the World Cup in around 1998, something like that.
96.
Whatever the year was, but we were recording that song. It probably wasn't in the same year as the World Cup, and we got the news at the studio.
And we actually spoke to Tim Leary just before from the studio. And he did say to Ray, "You made me more famous than I am." So that was a nice tribute for Ray.
And then the producer said, after we got the news, it was very sad, but it wasn't unexpected, I don't think, at the time. But and then the producer said, "Hey, why don't you guys do like Timothy Leary Lives?" I don't think so. Terribly bad taste.
All right, well that makes a good segue. Somebody else asked a question here. Is there any song that you would like to do a part 2 to, a sequel, if you will? And does it ever come up, and anything you've ever given thought to? Okay, I'll move right along. Okay. All right. How are we doing on time? I know we started 15 minutes late. Can I keep this going for a little bit longer? And they spoke. All right. All right. Christine Rogers from Chippenham in Wiltshire. She'd like to know...
It's called Chippenham. But you're allowed to say Chippenham. That's too much. Don't you expect me to?
Chippenham?
Chippenham.
Chippenham?
Never mind. I said Chippenham is fine for you.
Okay, well, she's from
Thames, Chippenham, whatever you want.
all right, Thames, I know.
We should start off with tomatoes.
Go from there. Well, actually, I'm going to put this question to myself now. If you could be made the invisible man for a day, which is what I'd like to become right now, how would you spend that day? If you could be made invisible for one day, what would you do? How would you spend it?
Well, I wouldn't be on a roof with Wonder Woman in case Superman was around.
Anything for you on that one, John? You want to be invisible for a day?
Right this second in time.
I often am invisible. You know, you're invisible in restaurants, aren't you? So wait, waiter. Oh, I'm invisible. I'm regularly invisible.
All right, Graham. Here we go. This is this comes from the West Midlands. Christine Weber. Now, I don't expect you to remember this particular story, but you may be able to follow along what she's saying here. All right, she says here, I have never forgotten a charming little incident at one of your concerts at the NEC in Birmingham many years ago. As the occupants of the two seats in front of us were about to take their seats, the gentleman took the handkerchief from his breast pocket, lay it on the seat for his lady to sit on. Does anything, since you have the best seat in the house, do you ever see anything at your concerts that still takes you by surprise?
All the time. And in fact, last night as I'm walking on, a lot of you guys had decided you were going to wear white, and I thought I'd surprise you when I was all in white as well. Thank you. Feeling very proud of myself, and there's a woman down the front, right in front of where I end up sitting, and she was in the full regalia, white satin gloves up to here, beautiful satin dress, top, and I mean, dressed to the nines, and he was dressed in a white suit, looking like a Southern gentleman, jacket down to his knees, and that surprised me that she'd gone that far.
And for the two of you up front, have you ever gotten distracted by anybody in your concert where it has made you zone out for a second or forget where you are in a song?
Not so much nowadays, because I haven't got my glasses on. I can see the people at the back now, but not the people in front. But there was one incident where we played this gig, and it was, yeah, I'm sure you've heard this story before, and I'm not sure whether it's funny now or not, because it's politically incorrect now. But we obviously used to get a lot of drugs thrown up on stage, and that was very nice, and whatever, and it just stuff, there's a lot of stuff thrown. And times are hard now. People don't give away stuff that easily. But we were at this gig, and it was the structure of it was what they call festival seating, which means standing up. So they packed so many people into this giant basketball stadium, and there was a guy in the sort of center, a few rows back of this melee of people, and he was getting really excited, and then we saw a false leg appear, and he started to wave it around his head, and it was his prosthetic leg from just above the knee. See, this is terribly politically incorrect now, but he wouldn't think so, because he was having a lot of fun. And he started, people were throwing things and waving stuff around, and he took his leg off, and he had shorts on, he took his leg off, and he swung it round, and he threw it onto the stage. And it had a tennis shoe on it, so it described a very strange arc as it arrived on the stage between me and Ray. And we looked at it, we both looked at each other, we looked at it, and what can you do, And then one of the roadies, I think it was Dougie Locke, kept running on stage and saying, "What do you want to do, Jess? What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know, ask Ray." He goes, "What do you want, Ray? What do you want to do? What do you want to do with it?" And then in the end, we said, "Well, best not to leave it there." because we got quite a few songs to do. I said, just kick it back. So he took a run at it and kicked it back with the tennis shoe. It described another strange arc as it went into the crowd. And that was that really, I shall never forget that. But nobody went home without a leg. Legless. So it was all in good fun. But I have to say a lot of times that Ray was one of those people that had some sort of private joke, and I often could not look at him on stage anyway, because you know, you can't make eye contact and you just burst into tears laughing. So many a night like that where I'm facing that way, I can't even turn my head. So.
All right. We'll get a little, not too deep, but it's a YouTube video that's been making the rounds lately. It's been out there for a while, but lately it seems to be getting a lot of hits. I'm possibly in line what's going on in that side of the world. I'm referring to in August 1968 and the Prague incident, the Russians invading Czechoslovakia. What do you remember of that day and the political situation the next day, and how frightening was it? And is it true that your hotel was confiscated by Russian soldiers?
Yes, perfectly true. My room was taken by a Russian general, and when I started complaining to their equivalent of a concierge, you know, in a free Western kind of voice, he dived across, covered my mouth, because up till then I had no idea of the kind of people we're dealing with. I'm sure the other two guys have got lots of stories about the repression, but what amazed me most was when we were marched out at Tang Point, flown back to England. The Czechoslovakia in England didn't happen for 2 more days. And I'm thinking, it's kind of weird, you know, and it came as a surprise to everyone 2 days later. So that's when I stopped reading newspapers.
I remember we got back to the hotel in Prague, and the manager met us and said, would you come into my office? And he had champagne in there. And he said that the Russians had taken over the hotel. And we said, well, what's that got to do with us? You know, we've still got our rooms because we've got our voucher, you know, saying. And he said, no, you don't get this. They've taken all the hotel over, and we've had to move you to one room in another hotel. And we all were on bunk beds in this other hotel. And we went to the bathroom, and the